In the quiet sanctity of St. Michael's Church in Dublin, where whispered prayers rise like incense to the heavens, one moment of divine disruption shattered the serene ritual of a Sunday Massachusetts. But before we continue, kindly like and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone that needs to see it. And tell us where you are watching from. My name is Father Thomas Gallagher, and at 70 years of age, after 45 years of devoted ministry, I thought I knew the full breadth of God's mysteries. With countless masses, baptisms, marriages, and funerals woven into the tapestry of my life, I believed my faith was unshakable. Yet nothing had prepared me for September 15, 2005, when a 12-year-old boy named Liam O'Sullivan stood up amid my homily, his voice ringing with a prophecy so vividly impossible that it left me questioning the very core of my beliefs. Liam's interruption was not merely a breach of liturgical decorum. It was a declaration that shattered the stillness of the Church. He proclaimed that on September 15, 2025, the statue of St. Michael the Archangel in our church would weep tears of blood. At that moment, I dismissed his words as nothing more than a child's fanciful imagination, a youthful indiscretion needing correction. I reprimanded Liam for disturbing the sacred service, yet as the years passed, the memory of that day refused to fade. It lingered, a persistent echo that challenged my rigid understanding of divine communication, gnawing at the edges of my certainty. That fateful morning in 2005 began like any other, with the familiar rhythm of my homily enveloping the congregation in its comforting cadence. Suddenly, Liam's voice cut through the sanctuary, his prophecy hanging in the air like an uninvited specter. The congregation was plunged into a collective silence, a mixture of shock and disbelief etched on their faces. My immediate reaction was one of anger and embarrassment, a desire to restore the order and decorum that I held so dear. Yet, beneath the surface, I was deeply unsettled. This chapter marks the beginning of my spiritual journey, illuminating the tension between my steadfast adherence to liturgical tradition and the unsettling possibility that Liam's words harbored a deeper truth I was unwilling to embrace. To fully comprehend why Liam's words struck such a chord and why I spent years dismissing his prophecy, one must understand the man I was then, a priest steeped in tradition, who revered order and structure above all else. My upbringing and seminary training instilled in me a profound respect for the solemnity and structure of religious practice. Yet now, that very structure was being challenged in a way I could no longer ignore. As I reflect on my journey, I realize that Liam's interruption was not merely a momentary disruption but the genesis of a profound transformation in my understanding of faith and divine communication. The church bells tolled in the distance, marking the passage of time with their solemn resonance. Each chime seemed to echo the persistent unrest within me, a reminder of the day when Liam's prophecy disrupted the sanctity of my structured world. Despite the years that had slipped by, his words clung to my conscience like a shadow, refusing to be dismissed into the recesses of forgotten memories. I had tried to bury the incident beneath the weight of daily ritual, immersing myself in the comforting cadence of the Mass, the familiar prayers, the incense curling through the air like a holy whisper. Yet, even as I performed these sacred duties, a part of my soul remained tethered to that fateful day not by choice, but by an inexplicable compulsion. One evening, after the congregation had dispersed and the church lay quiet, I found myself lingering in the pews. The dim light from the stained glass windows cast colorful patterns on the stone floor, a silent testament to the divine artistry that graced our place of worship. I closed my eyes, hoping that in the stillness I might find peace. Instead, I heard Liam's voice again, clear and unyielding, as though he stood beside me. "Father, the Lord speaks beyond the confines of our understanding." I opened my eyes and sighed, the air heavy with incense and introspection. The notion that God might choose to communicate outside the familiar bounds of tradition was unsettling. My entire life had been devoted to the Church, its order a refuge in a world of chaos. Yet the possibility that I had witnessed a genuine divine message gnawed at the edges of my faith, demanding acknowledgement. I rose from the pew and walked toward the altar, the marble cool beneath my fingers. There, beneath the gaze of the crucifix, I prayed for guidance. "Lord, grant me the wisdom to discern your will, even when it challenges my understanding." I whispered, my voice a fragile thread in the vastness of the empty church. In the days that followed, I found myself revisiting the scriptures with a newfound urgency. I pored over passages where God spoke through unexpected vessels, a burning bush, a dream, a gentle whisper. Each story resonated with the same theme: God's ways were not man's ways, and his voice could emerge from the most unlikely of places. Yet, even as I immersed myself in these sacred texts, doubt lingered like a shadow. How could I, a man of the cloth, reconcile my devotion to tradition with the unsettling notion that God might choose to speak through someone like Liam? It was a question that haunted my every waking moment, a silent companion in my journey of faith. As the date of the prophecy drew near, my unease grew. I found solace in the confessional, where the burdens of my parishioners' souls were laid bare before me. Their struggles, their sins, their hopes, they were tangible, real, something I could grasp and respond to. But my own internal conflict was a silent battle, fought in the quiet recesses of my heart. During one such confession, a young woman knelt before me, her voice trembling as she shared her fears and doubts. "Father, how do we know when God is speaking to us?" she asked, her words echoing my own unspoken question. I hesitated, the weight of my own uncertainty pressing heavily upon me. "We listen with our hearts," I replied carefully, "trusting that God will guide us, even when his voice is difficult to discern." The words felt inadequate, yet they seemed to bring her comfort. As she rose to leave, I remained in the confessional, grappling with the realization that my own heart was not yet open to the possibility that Liam's prophecy could be true. In the days leading up to the prophesied event, a sense of anticipation hung in the air, palpable and persistent. I found myself drawn to the church more often, seeking solace in the sacred space, hoping for a sign, a whisper of divine affirmation. Then, on the eve of the appointed day, I stood before the altar once more, the church bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. I knelt, my hands clasped, and offered a prayer of surrender. "Lord, if it is your will, reveal your truth to me. Help me to see beyond my own limitations, to embrace the mystery of your ways." As I rose, a profound sense of peace washed over me, quieting the turmoil within. The Lord's presence was tangible, a gentle assurance that I was not alone in my struggle. In that moment, I understood that faith required not only belief in the seen, but trust in the unseen, a lesson that transcended the boundaries of tradition and touched the very essence of the divine. With renewed resolve, I left the church, the weight of time no longer a burden but a reminder of the journey I had embarked upon. The prophecy remained a mystery, one I might never fully comprehend. Yet, I was determined to approach the coming day with an open heart, ready to witness whatever revelation God might choose to bestow. As the night unfolded, I found solace in the knowledge that faith, like life, was a journey, a sacred dance between certainty and doubt, between the known and the unknowable. And in that dance, I discovered the grace to embrace both the tradition I cherished and the mystical possibility that had been awakened within me. The weight of time had not diminished my faith but had deepened it, transforming my understanding of the divine. As dawn approached, I felt a quiet anticipation, a readiness to encounter the mystery of God's ways with humility and hope. Little did I know, the journey had only just begun. As dawn broke on September 15th, 2025, the air around St. Michael's Church was thick with a peculiar anticipation. The prophecy, whispered from lips to eager ears, had woven a tapestry of curiosity that drew people from near and far. The old stone structure stood resolute against the morning light, its spire reaching towards the heavens as if in silent prayer for what the day might unfold. Inside, Father Thomas paced the length of the sacristy, his heart a tumult of emotions. The faithful had gathered in numbers unseen since Easter, their faces a mosaic of hope, skepticism, and quiet longing. He paused to gaze out the small window, watching as the crowd swelled. The prophecy had become a beacon, an invitation to witness the divine in the midst of the ordinary. The church bells chimed, each note a clarion call to the soul. Father Thomas felt their resonance deep within him, stirring a reluctant anticipation. He recalled the words of the prophecy, still shrouded in mystery, yet undeniably potent. It spoke of a day when the veil between earth and heaven might be drawn back, revealing the miraculous in the mundane. Father Thomas adjusted his vestments, the familiar fabric a comforting weight upon his shoulders. The priest's heart was a crucible of conflicting emotions: doubt and faith, fear and hope. He was a man of reason, yet the possibility of divine validation tugged at the edges of his skepticism. As he stepped into the nave, a hush fell over the congregation. The stained glass windows cast vibrant patterns of color upon the pews, a reminder of the divine artistry that dwelt in creation. Father Thomas approached the altar, his steps measured, his mind a silent prayer for guidance. "Dear brothers and sisters," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil within, "we gather today in the presence of our Lord, united by hope and faith. Let us open our hearts to the mystery of God's grace, trusting that His will shall be done." The Mass unfolded with solemnity, each prayer and hymn a thread in the tapestry of worship. Father Thomas felt the weight of expectation pressing upon him, a tangible force that threatened to unsettle his composure. Yet, he clung to the ritual, allowing it to anchor him amidst the storm of emotions. As the liturgy progressed, the priest found himself drawn into the sacred dance of the Eucharist. The moment of consecration approached, a sacred crescendo in the symphony of faith. He raised the host, his hand steady though his heart quivered with the enormity of the act. The silence in the church was profound, a collective breath held in anticipation of the divine. In that suspended moment, Father Thomas felt a shift, a subtle stirring in the air. It was as if the very atmosphere had become charged with a presence beyond comprehension. He closed his eyes, whispering the words of consecration with reverence and awe. "Take this, all of you, and eat of it," he intoned, his voice resonating in the stillness. "For this is my body, which will be given up for you." As the host was elevated, a light bloomed, soft and ethereal, enveloping the altar in a gentle glow. It was not the harsh glare of the sun, but a warm luminescence that seemed to emanate from within the very heart of the Eucharist. A collective gasp rose from the congregation, a sound of wonder and disbelief mingled. Father Thomas opened his eyes, his breath catching in his throat. The sight before him was unlike anything he had ever witnessed, a manifestation of the sacred, a glimpse of the divine mystery that lay at the heart of the prophecy. The light seemed to pulse with a gentle rhythm, a silent hymn of grace and love. Tears welled in the priest's eyes, an overwhelming sense of humility and gratitude flooding his being. In that moment, all doubt was dispelled, replaced by a profound certainty that transcended reason. The prophecy was not merely a rumor, but a testament to the divine presence that permeated all creation. The congregation, too, was transformed. Faces aglow with the reflected light, they knelt in reverence, hearts lifted in silent praise. The miracle was not a spectacle, but an invitation, a call to deeper faith, to a renewed understanding of the divine. As the Mass concluded, Father Thomas stood before his flock, a shepherd humbled by the grace bestowed upon them. "Today, we have witnessed a sign," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "A reminder that God is with us, in every moment and every breath. Let us carry this light into the world, as bearers of His love and grace." The congregation departed, each soul carrying a piece of the miracle within them. Father Thomas lingered in the church, the quietude a balm to his spirit. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not in grandiosity, but in the quiet revelation of God's presence. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over St. Michael's, Father Thomas knew the journey was far from over. The day of reckoning had opened a new chapter, one of deeper faith and understanding. With a heart full of gratitude, he stepped into the twilight, ready to embrace the mystery of God's ways with renewed hope and humility. As Father Thomas stepped into the hushed sanctuary the next morning, the air seemed to hum with anticipation. The congregation gathered, their faces a tapestry of hope and curiosity. Word of the prophecy had spread like wildfire through the village, drawing both the devout and the doubtful to St. Michael's. The church, usually a place of serene reflection, now buzzed with an undercurrent of expectancy. Father Thomas, garbed in his vestments, felt the weight of the moment as he approached the altar. His heart beat like a quiet drum, steady yet insistent, as he began the sacred rite of consecration. The familiar Latin phrases rolled off his tongue, a litany of devotion and supplication. Yet, beneath the ritual's comforting cadence, a tremor of uncertainty lurked. Could this day truly herald a miracle? As the service progressed, Father Thomas glanced towards the statue of St. Michael, a towering figure of serene strength. Its chiseled features bore witness to countless prayers and whispered confessions over the years. Today, it stood as a silent sentinel, poised on the brink of transformation. The moment arrived. Father Thomas elevated the chalice, the wine within gleaming like liquid rubies under the church's stained glass light. The congregation held its collective breath, a sea of eyes fixed on the altar, hearts open to the divine mystery unfolding. Then, as if summoned by the fervent prayers of the faithful, a hush fell over the assembly. It was as if time itself paused, allowing the sacred to seep into the mundane. And in that pregnant silence, the impossible happened. A gasp rippled through the crowd as the statue of St. Michael began to weep. Tears, crimson and glistening, emerged from the stone eyes, tracing a path down the angelic visage. The tears of blood fell soundlessly, each drop a testament to a power beyond human comprehension. Father Thomas felt his knees weaken, a wave of awe and reverence washing over him. For a moment, he stood rooted to the spot, the enormity of the revelation rendering him speechless. Around him, the congregation reacted in a chorus of gasps, sobs, and whispered prayers. The skeptics among them, those who had come out of curiosity or doubt, now found their disbelief shattered, replaced by a profound sense of wonder. The tears continued to flow, an unearthly phenomenon that defied explanation. Father Thomas, regaining his composure, stepped forward to address his flock. His voice, though steady, carried the weight of this divine encounter. "My dear friends," he began, "we stand in the presence of a miracle. Let us open our hearts to the message it brings." The congregation listened, enraptured, as Father Thomas spoke of faith, humility, and the inscrutable ways of God. He urged them to embrace the mystery, to let it deepen their relationship with the divine. "This miracle," he said, "is not just a sign, but an invitation. An invitation to see the sacred in every moment, to be vessels of God's love and grace." As the service concluded, the parishioners lingered, reluctant to leave the aura of holiness that enveloped the church. Many kneeled before the statue, their prayers mingling with tears of gratitude and penitence. Others huddled in quiet groups, sharing their reflections and marveling at the day's events. Father Thomas watched them, his heart full of gratitude and humility. The miracle had touched him deeply, challenging his understanding of faith and the divine. He realized that his role as a shepherd was not to have all the answers, but to guide his flock through the mysteries of faith, to walk with them in both certainty and doubt. As the last of the congregation departed, Father Thomas remained, contemplating the events that had unfolded. The statue, now tear-streaked and solemn, stood as a testament to the day's revelation. Father Thomas approached it, laying a hand gently on the cool stone. "Thank you," he whispered, his words a prayer of gratitude and awe. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the church floor, Father Thomas stepped into the evening light. The miracle had indeed opened a new chapter, one that promised to deepen the faith of the community, and challenge them to live with greater love and compassion. With a renewed sense of purpose, he knew the journey ahead would be one of discovery and transformation, a testament to the boundless mysteries of God's grace. As the evening air cooled and Father Thomas walked away from the church, his mind lingered on the tear-streaked statue, a silent witness to the day's extraordinary events. The miracle that had unfolded within the sacred walls of St. Andrew's was not just a moment of divine intervention for the congregation, it was a catalyst for profound personal reflection. Father Thomas had always been a man of reason, his faith deeply rooted in the teachings of the Church, but often tested by the mysteries that defied human understanding. Yet the sight of the statue weeping had pierced through his skepticism, calling him to embrace a deeper, more mystical aspect of his faith. It was as though the tears of the statue had washed away the layers of doubt that had accumulated over the years. As he walked, Father Thomas's thoughts turned to Liam, the young man whose interruption had set the stage for this divine revelation. Initially, Father Thomas had viewed Liam's outburst as a disruption, a challenge to his authority. But now, in the stillness of his heart, he began to see it differently. Perhaps Liam, with his unbridled enthusiasm and questioning spirit, had been chosen as an unlikely messenger. It was a humbling realization that divine truth often spoke through the voices least expected. Father Thomas paused, looking up at the night sky, the stars twinkling like distant candles. He recalled the words of St. Paul, "God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise." In that moment, Father Thomas felt a profound connection to the Apostle's insight. The miracle had been a reminder that faith was not a fortress of certainty, but a journey of humility and openness. The next morning, the church authorities arrived to investigate the miracle. Father Thomas stood by as they meticulously examined every detail, their expressions ranging from skepticism to awe. He watched as they collected evidence, took photographs, and interviewed witnesses. While they sought tangible proof, Father Thomas knew that the true miracle was unfolding within the hearts of the people. As the investigation continued, Father Thomas found solace in prayer. He knelt before the altar, seeking guidance and clarity. "Lord," he whispered, "help me to see with eyes of faith, to embrace the mystery of your presence in all things." His prayer was not one of seeking answers, but of surrendering to the divine will, trusting that God was at work in ways beyond human comprehension. After the investigators departed, Father Thomas gathered the parishioners for a quiet reflection. The church was filled with a sense of reverence, the air heavy with anticipation. "My dear brothers and sisters," Father Thomas began, his voice resonating with warmth, "we have witnessed something extraordinary, something that transcends our understanding. But let us remember, the true miracle is not just in what we have seen, but in the transformation of our hearts." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "We are called to be open to the unexpected, to welcome the divine in the ordinary moments of our lives. Faith requires humility, a willingness to be led by God's grace, even when it challenges our preconceived notions." The congregation listened intently, their hearts stirred by the truth of Father Thomas's message. In the days that followed, the community experienced a spiritual renewal. Prayer groups formed, acts of charity increased, and a new sense of unity emerged. The miracle had ignited a flame of faith that burned brightly within their souls. Father Thomas himself felt rejuvenated, his heart open to the wonders of God's presence. He spent time with Liam, listening to the young man's dreams and struggles. Through their conversations, Father Thomas discovered that Liam's questions were not signs of rebellion, but a deep longing for truth and understanding. It was a reminder that faith was a lifelong journey, filled with both certainty and doubt, and that every question was an invitation to grow closer to God. As Father Thomas looked out over his congregation during Sunday Mass, he saw not just familiar faces, but hearts transformed by grace. The miracle had been a divine invitation to look beyond the surface, to recognize the sacred in the mundane, and to embrace a faith that was alive and dynamic. The chapter of transformation was not yet complete, but Father Thomas knew that their journey together would be one of discovery and deepening faith. As he raised the chalice, the light streaming through the stained glass windows, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. The miracle had opened his eyes to the boundless mysteries of God's grace, a grace that often operated through the humble and unassuming, calling each of them to be vessels of love and compassion in the world. With this renewed understanding, Father Thomas led his flock with a spirit of openness and humility, ready to embrace whatever divine surprises lay ahead. The journey was far from over, but they would walk it together, their hearts aligned with the rhythm of God's eternal love. Father Thomas stood at the entrance of St. Michael's Church, his heart swelling with a mixture of awe and humility. What had once been a modest parish in a quiet neighborhood was now a beacon of spiritual renewal, drawing pilgrims from near and far. They came with stories of their own, carrying hopes, burdens, and a yearning to see the place where the divine had touched the ordinary. The miracle had transformed their humble church into a sacred site, a place where heaven and earth seemed to meet. As the sun rose, casting golden hues through the stained glass windows, Father Thomas marveled at the way the light danced across the altar, as though the colors themselves were whispering secrets of the divine. It was a daily reminder of the mystery he had been called to serve, a mystery that was as boundless as the sky and as intimate as the quiet prayers murmured in the pews. The church was filled with a gentle hum of voices, pilgrims mingling with the faithful parishioners, each person drawn by the same invisible thread of grace. Among them, Father Thomas noticed a young girl, her eyes wide with wonder as she gazed at the stained glass. Her innocence and curiosity struck a chord within him, reminding him of the pure, unguarded faith that often eludes adults. He approached her with a warm smile. "Hello there. What do you see in the windows?" he asked gently, kneeling to her level. The girl turned to him, her expression serious. "I see colors that look like angels," she said, her voice filled with certainty. "They're singing." Father Thomas nodded, touched by her simple yet profound observation. "Yes, they do sing," he agreed. "Sometimes we have to listen with our hearts to hear them." Nearby, a group of older pilgrims were gathered, sharing stories of their own spiritual encounters and the reasons that had brought them here. Father Thomas listened attentively, his heart open to the myriad ways God spoke through each of them. He realized that these stories, these personal testaments of faith, were as much a part of the miracle as the event itself. A woman approached him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Father, this place, it feels different. It's as if God is closer here," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. He took her hands in his, offering a reassuring smile. "God is always close, my dear. But sometimes we need reminders to open our eyes and hearts to His presence." The influx of visitors brought with it a unique set of challenges. Father Thomas found himself called to balance the needs of his parishioners with those of the pilgrims, ensuring that everyone felt welcomed and nurtured. He relied on the strength and support of his community, who had embraced their new role with open arms and generous hearts. Through this experience, Father Thomas learned to listen more deeply, not just with his ears, but with his soul. He discovered that God's voice was not confined to moments of grandeur or clarity, but often spoke in whispers, in the gentle rustling of leaves, in the laughter of children, and in the quiet moments shared between strangers. One afternoon, as he sat in the garden behind the church, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The miracle had been a catalyst for change, not only for the parish but for his own faith. It had taught him to relinquish the need for certainty and control, to embrace the unpredictability of God's plan with a heart full of trust. A rustling in the bushes caught his attention, and he turned to see a small bird perched on a branch, its feathers shimmering in the sunlight. It sang a song that was both simple and profound, a melody that seemed to echo the heartbeat of creation itself. In that moment, Father Thomas understood that the divine was woven into the fabric of everyday life, a mystery that invited constant exploration and wonder. As the days turned into weeks, Father Thomas noticed a transformation within himself. He became more attuned to the nuances of human emotion, more compassionate in his ministry, and more willing to step into the unknown. He realized that true faith was not a destination, but a lifelong journey, a pilgrimage of the heart. The community of St. Michael's thrived under his leadership, becoming a testament to the power of love and unity. Parishioners and pilgrims alike found solace and inspiration within its walls, drawn by the tangible sense of God's presence. The miracle had indeed opened their eyes to the boundless possibilities of grace, challenging them to become vessels of love and compassion in a world that so desperately needed both. Father Thomas often thought of the young girl and her vision of angels in the stained glass. He pondered the lesson she had unknowingly taught him, that sometimes it was the innocent and unburdened who saw the divine more clearly than those weighed down by the complexities of life. As he prepared for the evening Mass, Father Thomas felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey he had been on. The miracle had been a gift, a divine invitation to see the world through new eyes. It had reminded him that faith was not about having all the answers, but about embracing the mystery with an open heart. The church bells rang out, their melody echoing through the streets, calling the faithful to gather once more. As the congregation filled the pews, Father Thomas felt the familiar rhythm of their presence, a sacred dance that united them in their shared humanity and divine purpose. He raised the chalice, its surface reflecting the colors of the stained glass, and offered a silent prayer of thanks. The journey was ongoing, filled with unknowns and unexpected turns, but he knew that they would walk it together, guided by the light of God's eternal love. The Mass concluded with a hymn that soared to the rafters, a melody of hope and renewal. As the final notes lingered in the air, Father Thomas looked out at his congregation, his heart full of love for each soul entrusted to his care. In that moment, he understood that the true miracle was not just the event that had drawn the world to their doorstep, but the transformation of hearts, the awakening to the sacred that lay within each of them. And so, with renewed faith and a spirit open to divine surprises, Father Thomas embraced the mystery, eager to discover what lay beyond the horizon of the known. The journey of St. Michael's Church, and his own spiritual pilgrimage, was far from over. But with each step, they moved closer to the heart of God, guided by the light of faith and the enduring promise of grace. If this blessed you, kindly like for more faith-filled messages like this. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any video we share. May the souls of the faithful departed through the mercy of God rest in peace. Amen.